Good day. Happy spring equinox, everyone. And Maliah made it just in time.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Yes, she did.
Hi, everyone.
Well, this is meant to be because I've been trying to get all of you lovely souls together for some time, both Maliah and Julia, remote viewers, and Libras, I hear? Is that correct?
Libras. Woo! We got a big Libra eclipse March 25th in a few days.
I was just going to say March 25th. It is the moon going through Libra. This is a big transition time. It's a good thing.
Her family has a bakery that's been there for years. It's in Miraloma. Sound familiar?
Golasso Bakery.
Yes, nice.
Cool.
So tonight I was
dead air
to cover a bunch of things. Well, with all of your different experiences and that journeys that we've all had in our lives, past conversations, Walter, a lot of times you've brought up the hitchhiker effect, and maybe if you'd want to start off by giving a brief description of that and like your own experience with it.
Hitchhiker effect. I'll tell you, I've had one hitchhiker that multiple people have told me has been with me for a long time. The first time I was told that was I was in the Air Force living in Ohio. I was stationed at Wright-Patterson, and I was introduced to a psychic who proved to me that she was legit. So she's one of the few that I'm rough on psychics because, not rudely, but I'm tough on them because I give them nothing. If they're real, you don't have to give them anything. And she proved herself, and she was the first person to tell me that because I was experiencing a presence in the apartment I was living in Fairborn, which is right there where the base is. And it was pretty intense, the presence, but I never felt scared. It was interesting. And this was in between 96 and 99. And I told her that I thought that one of my guys who worked for me in my branch, one of my senior NCOs, he told me that an Air Force member had lived in the same apartment complex that I had moved into and had killed himself, this particular Air Force member. And so, I wondered if, oh, hey, my luck, I got that guy's apartment. So when I mentioned it to the psychic, she said, oh, no. She said, this spirit that's with you is female, and you brought her. I'm like, okay, who is it? And she couldn't really identify who it was. And then, some years later, as I was just beginning to investigate the Empire of the Wheel stuff, I was in a bookstore, and this young lady, kept looking at me, and I'm thinking, hey, I still got it. The chick's checking me out. No, that wasn't it. I should have known. She said, I hate to bother you, but said, I hate to bother you. I hope you don't think I'm weird or crazy, but do you have someone in your family named Marion or Miriam or something? I go, well, I have a sister named Mary. And the young lady said, this person's not alive. And then she described a woman I never met, but I heard described and saw in pictures all my life. And that was my grandmother, Mary, my dad's mom. Now, what's interesting was this was in 2008. And just a few months later, my dad died. He had been in the hospital for months, so we were expecting it. But this was during the time that my dad was dying, and his mother, according to this young lady, was there with me, trying to get her attention, to have her tell me that she's with me. And this young lady told me, she goes, yeah, that's it. I said, yeah, it's my grandmother, Mary. She goes, that's the name. But she described her. her hair color, her height. She asked me, does she like roses? I'm like, yeah, my dad always talked about that. So this complete stranger describes this grandmother, and she goes, she's standing right next to you, and she's always been attached to you your entire life. I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I felt like I kind of experienced it with the Coruscanton issue when I was investigating the Empire of the Wheel book, which we have there, Hans, and which I've talked about for years. And Maliah, to that, Maliah has since been picked up and,
Well,
communicated with.
okay, so we've also had several spirits that hang out with him on a continual basis. One of them being, can we talk about your mentor?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of them being his mentor, which many times when it's necessary, I will hear him like give me a, hey, tell Walter this or this and this thing.
I guarantee you what he says is tell dumbass to whatever.
And there's been times even where the message came through and it made no sense to me whatsoever. It just seemed completely out of left field. And the thing was, when I mentioned it, it actually brought you to tears. That one time, yeah, that one time, it was just so profound and something only these two would have known. And yeah, so it's happened lots of times. I saw Mary, I call her Maria, the first time I met Walter, and then she's always hanging around. She tends to stay at your home though, unless she's needed.
Yeah,
That's
and
all where I was expecting with it, but it's like that actually is like so wholesome and like actually is in parallel with my own experience with my own mom and like her father, my grandfather. I never met him. He was estranged my mom at the age of 8, and as a kid I was always like, Mom, like, are you ever worried or wonder what happened to your dad? She's like, no, he'll come to me in a dream when he dies. And then sure enough, like 20 years ago, like it was like a night before Christmas or something, I might get a call from my mom. She's like, yeah, he died. And she like called her sisters, and they like all called or like applied to the government that he could finally release his military records because he had passed. And then they got this info that he had remarried another woman that's like right north, like the city north of me. And I have like 3 more aunts with the exact same names as my current aunts on my mom's side. So I have another Aunt Kelly, Sherry, and Darcy. It's so weird. But just the fact that the media, but my mom always is like, oh, grandma's around with us now, grandma. And then it's like, it's a grandma, your grandma spirit that's is like your archangel, or like that is the hitchhiker as opposed to some other entity.
Well, I think, Bernai, when you're talking about hitchhiker, you're bringing up more like the shadow people and the more demonic negative influence. Is that what you're talking about? Like when someone sees a skinwalker, it got passed around that you could get a hitchhiker from that?
Just in general, like investigating the topic.
Any kind of spirit, right?
Yeah,
Is this
okay
energy?
So it's like in this, I guess we're seeing that it can be both ways, and that some people have like your family and your ancestral spirits around you all the time, and then there's also the other ones when you do. Lots of people say they have a UFO encounter or something like that, and then there'll be different entities interacting with them afterwards or stuff, or after having psychedelic experience and then having something remain afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I did have some weird spirits, weird things happen during the Empire of the Wheel investigation, and actually prior in 2004, I was still on my counterterrorism job, big bad counterterrorism agent guy, former federal agent, all that crap that I used to be. And I left my house one night in 2004 because I was too scared to stay there alone, because I swore something really bad was outside my house looking at me through the windows. Okay. And I couldn't get out to the car fast enough, and I went to a hotel and stayed that night. And then during the Empire of the Wheel years, the two, if you've read the book, you're familiar with the two Estep children. They used to show up in the tree that used to be in my front yard during those years. They would just hang out there. I sensed them. If I ever saw, it was in my mind, but I sensed their presence. One night also in about 2009, I want to say, I started, there were wrappings on the outside of the house where my desk was inside on the outside wall. And the way our fences were, nobody had free access to the backyard. And somebody would just, on the outside of the house, I'd hear like that.
Oh my God, no.
Okay. While I'm sitting there. Wow. And this would happen a lot.
Wow.
And in 2000, around there, one night, my mom and my oldest sister's there, and we hear someone walking on the roof. It wasn't an animal. It was human feet print. And I was used to this kind of weird stuff. And my sister and my mom went, "Who's on the roof?" They said, "Nobody that you'd be able to see." And I walked out there and looked around, and it was nobody pulling a joke. Nobody was there, but they heard it distinctly, a person walking across the roof. So had I picked those up when I was out either at the quarry or at the site of Inland Center where Urbita Springs Lake used to be, where Cora Stanton died,
Right.
or who knows? It could have been anywhere, any of the graveyards. But I was also taught necromancy by my mentor in around 1990, how to raise the dead and get information from them. And he told me that this was expected for me to learn this by superiors in the world of national security. So I might have picked up a hitchhiker there in my early attempts to raise a woman who had died in the late 1700s, and she's buried in the old Northport Cemetery on Long Island. And I have her name still and everything. I even gathered the soil from her grave and prepared it, because you're able to just blow the dust over a threshold of wherever you're at, and the spirit will come to you when you do the hokey pokey that you're taught. So I don't know. Maybe I picked up a hitchhiker.
Like, you're describing these rituals, these occult rituals, and they're alchemical rituals that I've read up on, and like that there is actual power and magic to this. Like, but there's also doorways, and you kind of might pick something up.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that cemetery, look it up. The old Northport Cemetery looks like something out of a horror movie. It's from the 18th century, early 19th century. It's got the old-timey headstones. A lot of them are knocked over. It's on a hill. There's usually overgrown grass and big, gnarly, dark trees. It was just beautiful.
What do you guys recommend for, like, protection? What do you guys recommend for protection, or what did you notice?
Good.
Yeah, she was just going to...
Walter did have, good question, Julie, because when I first arrived, Walter had several items from traveling the world that had attachments to it. So objects can have attachments, especially if they're like masks, carved masks, handmade items, this kind of stuff. They can definitely have entities that go with it. What were you going to say, Hans?
I've
got a ton of masks.
My screen is the wall of magic, and my father and I have both
the protection.
Yeah.
She was asking about protection, and I was instructed. I wear this. I don't have it on now. I don't wear it for years. I wore this thing 24/7 unless I was in the shower. It's a leather necklace that I make out of a bootstrap, and it has a particular number of knots in it, evenly spaced. And then the final knot is the one that joins the ends together. And I would wear that 24/7. And to activate it, you dip it in lukewarm water, you pad dry it, and for it to work, it has to be damp against your skin. And that is what I would use when going into the operation, the process of attempting to contact the dead person. And I was
Right.
told that this would protect me.
And that protects really well
Good.
against spells too. Spells that are cast on you from other people, living entities. And not all of the objects like masks and things or magical items have bad entities attached to them. Some of them can be benevolent, some of them can be neutral, some of them can be really positive for you, but what some people would call a negative entity, like a jinn or something. But protection
So
predominantly, like if you're trying to make sure an object, you know, that ring of salt, the ring of salt
Yes,
works
exactly.
really well.
Mm.
So that's what I wanted
Yeah.
to bring up. That's another ring that Walter described, having it on the skin. As soon as it sweats, you're putting your own biosalt into it and literally making
Oh
that
yeah,
ring
that's
of
the other
around you.
thing. Yeah, I was told that because you wear it all the time so that your sweat gets into it and it's tuned to you.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And with that, I was also taught that I could communicate telepathically, psychically, or whatever with any particular person, anywhere in the world. And I did
I
kind of test
believe
this a couple of
Wait,
times.
but you have to be wearing one of these royal crowns with like all gold on top of your crown chakra there with their giant jewels that are resonators. And if you're maybe
Yeah.
on one of the
Mhm.
big their thrones in the amplifies, especially in their cathedrals, then you might have quite the
Mhm.
telepathic capability, one might think. There's
God,
just-
you're
Yeah,
bringing
it
up
could be like an
so many-
antenna.
That sounds like the
so many-
like the what is that project? The Mind of God or technology or
Oh,
something.
voice of God.
The Voice of
Voice
God
to
technology.
skull.
Yeah.
Right? And could
But
that be
and then
why the
crystals,
mystic
having crystals around you. Sorry, go ahead.
why the mystics
Didn't mean to talk over
and
you,
like the royals, how they would be able to act like they had this sovereignty to God is with this technology and then using these alchemical spells and practices upon the people.
I'm always really fascinated too, like the Lady
Interesting.
Delche, like how you see all these depictions and there's something around their ears, almost like with the sound frequency that it helps take them to places
Yep.
and communicate.
Mhm.
Yep, indeed.
And
Yeah, that's a
possible
very
protection
interesting
as well.
statue.
Yes.
Sure. Very interesting statue and find. Yeah.
But yeah, for the ladies.
Oh, I was going to say too that I tested the communication wearing the string. I had an old friend. She's since passed away, and she was one of the best, most talented psychics I ever knew. And I was in one time I was in Tel Aviv, and she described perfectly. She didn't know where I was, but she described perfectly my view from the balcony of my room down the Corniche to Jaffa, Old Town Jaffa. She described exactly what I was seeing. And then when I was in Islamabad, she described, didn't know where I was at all, but she described my view, looking out my hotel room window, seeing the city and the jungle and these large birds flying from the city back into the jungle at around sunset. She described it to a T. And this was in the days when I would wear that all the time. I quit wearing it because a good friend of mine, who is a theology expert, was concerned that it's necromancy, Walter, and so there was a period where I quit wearing it, but I've taken to using it again. I don't wear it all the time. But.
It's interesting that you bring up Islamabad with this, because Islamabad is, as you know, you've been there, like I have. I've been there a few times. It's a planned city, and so the central area is Gulistan, where all the markets are in the middle. and then they're all the neighborhoods, and they go from A1 to A15 each, all the way around.
Yep.
And you have Rawalpindi, which is the old city sitting across the river. And so you're in the middle of a structured city when you were saying this, and I'm like, wow, it's almost like it's fractal geometry of sorts is amplifying that experience.
Sure. Yeah, good point. I really enjoyed Islamabad. I was there once for a month. Yeah. What's that?
I said I loved Islamabad.
You said you liked it.
Oh, yeah. Islamabad's nice. Karachi, again, I was there at a time when, it probably wasn't so wonderful to be there. And I really was hoping to see, oh my gosh, the place in Pakistan that, the ancient city that's all melted. What is that called?
There's Taxila, and then there's Rohtas. Taxila is where Alexander the Great, that was the final city that he made. It's right on the Indus River. I want to say
this is the one that's famous for everything looks like it was destroyed in an ancient blast and everything's melted.
Mohenjo-daro, yeah.
Yes, Mohenjo-daro. I was hoping to get there.
Right on the Indus River, yeah.
Yeah, but that trip, our schedule was real tight, so I didn't get to do a lot of. I would always try to do some personal exploration when I went somewhere, but I wasn't able to then. But anyway, if I had any hitchhikers, it might have come from when I was, as my friend said, was doing necromancy, or when I was going around to certain locations.
Walter doesn't have any hitchhikers on him.
Well, right?
Okay. None of you guys actually have any. I don't see any hanging on it.
As you brought
Hans, up, you do have some very interesting entities behind you.
So I brought a couple.
Here we go.
So these are both.
I love it. I love that.
The Buddhist culture is full of magic and mysticism. My book on the Dropo stones and the Dropo people that are nomadic through the region is very much a lot about this. There's a lot of magic and mysticism, and so you were talking about masks, and it's like I have a whole wall of masks. My dad used to collect masks all the time, and so he has I want to inherit this eventually, but he has this whole wall of these super old Nepalese masks from the villages that are amazing.
Oh wow!
And so there's definitely.
Have you heard of the Vinca culture?
Of course,
the Vinca culture
out of Romania and
okay. I have a mask that she doesn't like.
I don't.
It's a mask that is Vincan style art. It's real big, and it's a bearded man with a crown. And when I did the research, he represents Rex Mundi. There's an association to Rex Mundi, king of the world who lives in the Hollow Earth. And
no, it's nasty. It has human teeth.
She made me put it outside, but it still exists. It's still around.
You said, Maliah, that there's an entity of sorts. And so when I was very young, growing up in Nepal, my dad worked in this village in the Gurung Valley that's way up on a cliffside. It takes 6 hours to climb from the river to this village. Gurung village called Sikrung or Silung. And the headmaster of the village, along with a lot of the people who lived there, were all World War II veterans from the British side. They were Gurkha soldiers. And so they fought in Brunei, which was one of the bloodiest wars ever. It was all hand-to-hand combat, a lot of it. And the Gurkhas, if you've ever seen The Man Who Would Be King, they have no remorse. Ayoga Kali, and they're going to run into battle.
The modern Gurkhas were in Iraq when I was there. We encountered them a lot.
Of course. They have no remorse because of their village lifestyle. It's like, life, death. It doesn't have the same meaning that it does to us in the West. Not that it's bad or good. No judgment there. So when I was 5 and I'm in the village in Sikrung, we were there for Desai. This is in my book, actually. And we were introduced, my sister and I, to the village cultural mysticism and shaman practice. And so the shaman also plays as the village jester. And so he came out with this katana that was taken off of a Japanese officer in Brunei during World War II. And he's doing his dance and he's mesmerizing the buffalo. And there's a couple of watermelons on a stick, and he slices all these down like butter. And then he looks at the buffalo, and the buffalo bows its head. It's really interesting how this happens. And he does this spin twist, and in one blow, the head is gone. It slides off. And, you know, I'm 5 looking at this, and this sword impressed me so much at that age that I wanted it for years and years to come. I had dreams about this. I would go into the village as a ninja, and I was trying to rescue the sword from people that came into the village. And what's really interesting is during the Maoist insurgency in Nepal, the Maoists knew that there were Gurkha soldiers living up in the highlands, and they were coming for their weapons. And so the women are the ones that use the nettle fields as a place where they go for their own feminine practice, but they also harvest the nettles and make nettle tea, nettle soup, whatnot. Men don't go into the nettle fields because nettles sting and they're you know, horrible on your skin. And if you don't know what you're doing, your hives all the way up to your neck. And so they realized when the Maoists were coming, and because I had asked about these swords for years, they took all these weapons from World War II and they buried them in the nettle fields, so the Maoists could never claim them. And I went back with my dad. It was before the Maoist insurgency, but I went back to the village and I wanted the sword that the headmaster had, and he just would not give it up. But a person from the next village over said, I will give you my sword. And so he went and got it and brought it back. It's full of creosote all across it. It's an officer's sword. It has a silver wrap handle with eel skin underneath, but it's stamped. It has a number stamp. And so I've spent diligently the last few years trying to restore this over and over and over again. And my friends at the sushi restaurant gave me some polishing stones that they use on their knives. And they're like, here, use this, create like a froth with it, and it becomes a porous froth that you can actually bring some of this this residue off of it. And I've always wanted to get it to a point where I can take it apart. I can see the 3 stamps that are inside underneath the hilt. There'll be the maker of the sword, the family it was made for, and when it was made, regardless of the military stamp that's on it. And eventually I'd love to go back to Japan and hand it back over. I mean, it doesn't belong to me, but you were talking about
we'd like to go with you.
Weird entities. I should, while you guys are all chatting, run upstairs and grab that. But you're all talking about weird entities, that are in the field, and I wanted to bring something up that kind of, involves Julia as well. And so I have a lot of weird connections with my past family as well. My great grandfather was a mystic. He was Prussian. He came to San Francisco in the, I want to say 1880s, started the San Francisco bakery, and then moved that to Alaska before Alaska he was one of the first pioneers in Alaska. But he was like a Mason and a mystic and a blacksmith. My last name is Knife Maker, so his whole lineage was this Prussian blacksmithing from a village south of Stuttgart. And so I've always had this really weird connection with my great-grandfather. But then when my grandfather passed, my sister and I had the exact same dream the same night. And it was crazy. And we sat down in a chair and talked with him about life, and it was really interesting. And the next day, my dad's like, "Oh, I have bad news. Grandfather's passed." And my sister and I looked at each other, and I said, "I had this dream," and she said, "So did I." And we had the connection that we had the same dream. And when my dad's grandfather, my great grandfather, this mystic died, he was in Nepal, and he was sitting on a hillside, and he saw it in the clouds, and he's like, "Oh, my grandfather's died." And he then got a telegraph in the village. This is the 60s when he was there in the Peace Corps. And the telegraph said, "Hey, come to Nepal. We have important information for you," or "Come to Kathmandu. We have important information for you." So he came down from the Gurung village through Dumre and Kudi and all these villages all the way out to the main road that goes between Pokhara and Kathmandu. And he ends up in Kathmandu, and he goes into, the U.S. Embassy, and he's talking with the Peace Corps director. And the director says, "Don, I've got some bad news for you." And my dad says, "I know, my grandfather's passed." And he said, "How would you know this? We just received this telegram 2 days ago." And he's like, "I know, because my grandfather and I had that connection." And so that's when you were saying riders or something along these lines, hitchhikers in a sense. I think they exist across a lot of our family lineages for sure. There definitely is something about that. So where I was going with this was because I also have this connection with my grandmother on my mom's side, and she would always show up as a white owl. And this is where, Julia and I kind of have this interesting overlap with owls. And I had a question for both of you, if you've had extensive owl experience with any of your like esoteric experiences.
Oh yeah,
Owls or birds
Absolutely.
in general?
Julia, you're the one talked about in Mike's book, right?
I have white owls that go where I go. They go in different cities and stuff.
Yeah, aren't you the
Just
one?
the white owl.
You're the one that Mike has talked about for years, right?
No,
Or am I getting you mixed up?
You're getting me mixed
but
up.
you've mentioned
I have all.
before.
Yes, I've had there's this white owl. I'll go to different cities. I have all these pictures. Like, people are changed when they're they don't believe me, and then when they're with me, they are changed afterwards.
I literally had a white owl show up right as I thought of Julia after a podcast a month ago. It was what?
I have a bunch of videos and stuff. In fact, the night I launched my YouTube channel a few months ago, there was one right outside the window, and this huge one. I have a video of it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, in 2014, I'm sitting at home. I forget what time it is. It's in the evening, late in the evening. And I hear the most blood-curdling scream of a woman outside somewhere. I mean, I was startled. I thought, oh, one of the neighbors is being attacked or murdered or something. And the moment I thought that and kind of sprung forward to move to go outside, the scream turned into clearly an owl's screech.
Mm-hmm.
And I still went outside, and I'm looking around, and I hear the hooting, and I look up in the top of a tree, another tree that's in my front yard that's still there, and at the very tippy top was this big owl that was just sitting up there perched looking at me, and it stayed there long enough for me to go in, get the camera, take video, and I can send the video and pictures to you.
Awesome.
It was really weird. And then I think within a short period of time, I found out that one of my dad's brothers died. So it was, in my opinion, it was very much a harbinger, a messenger of, someone had died. And then I had some other weird owl experiences where I hadn't felt I have this thing with the Tuatha Dé Danann where they literally show up in all my research, and I would begin to sense them. And it'd been a while, I think a year and a half, I hadn't sensed them. I wondered if they were still around. So I go out to do my daily walk. This was a few years ago. And before I started, I said, hey, if you're still out there, show me a sign. And as I was on my way back, just a half a block away from my house, and it was just at the liminal time. The sun was just going down. And I look up, and perched up on a light post is a huge owl. And I just see it in outline. I don't see its features clearly, but I can tell it's looking at me. And I just took that as okay, they heard me. This is them. Either the Tuatha or Hecate. Yeah.
There's times where I'll be in my house at odd hours and I get this feeling. It's not clairaudiently. It's like this feeling like you need to go outside now. And I'm like, but I don't want to go outside. Where it's not like you need to go outside, but like this overwhelming sense of like, yes, like
Right.
something's, giving me that. And then I did. And then it comes out. The way that it appears, it's always so dramatic, but I'm always like, it makes me so happy. And then, so what I started doing after so many times of that, where I was like, I'm going to summon it, I'm going to put out the signal, so, and then to see how quickly that worked of like, I did, I sent it out and then I went outside and I thought I'd have to like be out there for a while, and it may not even work, but it was within 20 seconds. Where I'm like, yes. And then that was my first time doing it. And it's just so interesting. But you mentioned like sending out telepathic messages. And I've noticed that helps people when I tell them like to do it in between heartbeats or send it out with the heartbeat. Like when you have a message to utilize that, it seems to really help because sometimes.
Yeah, just to add to that, when you're sending and wanting to transmit a telepathic message, it's better if you can take the words that you want to say and transmit them into feelings and an image. If you can picture the image in your mind and press out the feeling with that image, it's so much easier for that person on the responding end to recognize your signature, your your soul signature, which says this is coming from me, along with what it is that you're trying to communicate. Because a lot of times, especially when you're transmitting across language barriers, there's that language barrier. And then also, I've also seen entities come in and mess with word messages. So meaning like you may think you've got this sentence out to the person and they've received it, but there's some words missing, or there's kind of a mix up here and there. So I found that sending the pictures with the feeling tends to work just so much better, so much clearer. Yeah, so I love this topic. Yes, telepathy is way fun. We're going to start advancing more and more as we use telepathy more and get used to receiving the messages. The Maya say that once we reach this time, we're a decade into it, and that as we go through the next decade, we'll get even better with telepathic messages.
Hans was talking about the Maya in Egypt.
Hans is about to go on a tour. He gets there Wednesdays doing a Mayan tour with Johnny Enoch and
Grandmaster Templar Timothy Hogan. And so Tim's connection there is...
What sites are you going to?
So we're going to go into Cancun, and then we do Chichen Itza, Cobol, Nakmul, Tulum, and then 4 or 5 other sites, including a Mayan village experience. And, kind of connecting the dots.
Very neat. And Riviera Maya?
What's that?
Yeah. Very neat. We're actually, Walter and I were launching what we call LGH Hidden Manuscript Tours. And we're going to start taking people down to the Yucatan, and other places. But I lived there for several years, and yes. If you look up the Yucatan Times, that was my newspaper that I founded and started down there. So yeah, those are some great sites. You'll have, definitely have a good time, especially over in
our first day. We're going to be doing lectures. So I'm not sure what Johnny's lecturing on, but my lecture is on Egyptology, chematology, which is kind of a little bit of a background of mine, because going to Egypt and Peru, I hung out with Stephen Mailer and Yusuf and Patricia Iwan, the son and his wife of Hakim Iwan, who was a huge part of the Pyramid Code.
Oh, okay.
That. He's the guy that goes, "You must listen." But hanging out with them in Egypt and in Peru was really amazing. Peru was super amazing because it definitely connects this scenario of South America with Egypt. We were talking about Maui earlier and Maui, and so Maui was, I think, we were talking about this off channel, but Maui was this admiral of the sea from 232 BC. He was an Egyptian / Greco-Egyptian, and his captain was Captain Rata. And so they went through the Red Sea, through the Indian Ocean, all the way around Australia to New Zealand, and then, planted in New Zealand and left, their presence there, obviously, and then took the trade currents all the way across to about Santiago de Chile. And if you continue those trade currents, they take you all the way up into Peru, all the way across the Easter Island to Hawaii. There's a question if he even went up to Alaska, because there's a huge connection between a lot of the West Coast Native Americans and Inuits into Alaska with Hawaii and Polynesia. Yes. Major. It's very huge. And then he went back through Tonga and back to Egypt. And he was Maui. Well, the Polynesians know him as Maui. This is their god of the sea. This is the person that came out of nowhere and unified these islands and these peoples. And so it's interesting that here's this direct connection with, ancient Peru. And does it exist? Well, yeah. You go into the Larco Lima Museum in Lima, and in the basement is all their gold artifacts. And in the back section of the room, there are 3 mannequins wearing headdresses. 2 of them are broken, but they look like they would be 2 fingers that had circular objects going up them in gold. The one in the middle is solid gold, and it's just the 2 fingers. And then the one on the right is more of like a chainmail aspect. And so you look at this and you're like, this is the headdress of Amun from Egypt. I mean, it's so... I should share this. I'm not sure if I have.
I would love to hear from Walter and Maliah about the San Bernardino Mysteries, the Eros Sonora Club,
Yes.
First, I want to ask you. Actually, I've been thinking about this. With your owl experiences, do you also find evidence of either the Tuatha De Danann or Hecate or Athena popping up around
100%. But I even wrote a poem. Yeah, I thought it was Hecate. Like, that's how I always said it. But yeah, like
people
poetry.
pronounce it different ways. I learned. Yeah.
That's very Nordic of you. That's very Nordic of you to pronounce it that way. I love it.
Awesome. So yeah, like the poems I've done, and I always I'm like, this is from the triple goddess Hecate. Like, I would just say it, and then getting familiar with that, and absolutely Athena. And I'm very I'm not all love and light. Like, I have that warrior, strong
Sicilian,
right? Sicilian. Hey, so absolutely, I feel completely guided by them, completely, and very. I never talk about it though.
Yeah,
I've about it.
I've referred to myself as an Athenist for years before I started encountering Hecate, and I became what I call an Athenist because of my mentor's influence. He was also my uncle, and he's the one that, and you might find this interesting, he taught me how to read the Iliad and the Odyssey in a particular way. And it's a process that takes a few months. But oh boy, after I did it, he told me it would unlock some things. I would begin to understand
sonnet, almost
things.
almost like skipping certain rhythms.
I read. Well, here's the funny thing. He didn't tell me to read the versions in verse. He told me to read the prose versions. So I read the W.H.D. Rouse translations, which are told in narrative, form. But he told me a very specific way and order to read them. And after I did that, I really did just kind of understand some things. It was weird. And for years and anyway, I kind of keyed on Athena then, well, subsequently, when I learned about Hecate, I realized, oh, Athena is just another reflection of Hecate. Athena and Hecate are the same figure. And so I realized, oh, now I understand something more about Hecate. When I first learned about Hecate, she was the dark, scary, entity, demon, goddess of the witches. And then the more I learned about her and the more I experienced her aspects, no offense to the witches, but you guys don't own her. The whole witch culture
Nice
thing
try.
is just it's a slice of Athena. It's legitimate, but you don't own her, and you don't have the final word on her. And
A goddess is so much
she
more.
doesn't scare me at all.
She
doesn't scare me at all.
I love that how you read
What's
it. Like
that?
it's almost like you got the cipher, like in doing it in the rhythms, like it unlocked things like a cipher, and that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I guess so. And her now I have been warned also, never communicate with her, and I don't communicate with her. I kind of used to. I did briefly go to her for something once for a brief time, and it was more effective than I expected. And I haven't done that again. But she's still anyway. I could go for hours on the Hecate thing, but with your owl experiences, I was wondering, are you familiar with the Tuatha De Danann?
No.
Okay. I think you'll find them very interesting if you're into Hecate and Athena, because the Tuatha De Danann, from my perspective, in a nutshell, they and this is part of the lore and stuff, they come from somewhere else, another dimension, another whatever you want to call it, and I think she's one of them. She's a chthonic goddess, Hecate is, and I think she's one of the Tuatha De Danann. This is why the color blue is associated with her. Blue is their color. But you might find them
Isn't there an
very
overlap with Tolkien's work with this as well, with the elves?
Oh, I'm sure that Tolkien was well versed. In fact, I think I've read that his the Tuatha influenced the writing
that's what
of
I've always
those
thought.
books.
The elves, the elven cultures, because they were not from here. And then
but
they west.
Thank you. I'm going to look into that because, like, when I had written this poem and I was like, Hecate, like, this is like, I got this from Hecate. And like, then I didn't even know who she was, like I dove into it and then the whole Athena thing. And they've heard me go on rants about like, we need to bring the goddess worship back,
We do
definitely.
She's the goddess of the underworld, the queen of the crossroads of the underworld, and she's the one who I think, I'm convinced, when you die and you enter the underworld, she's the one you come to, not that misogynistic BS that Rome came up with about St. Peter at the pearly gates. No, she's the one that you face to enter into the land of the dead, and I don't think it's a bad thing. That's another thing I could go on for hours. But she emerged for me as herself in the Empire of the Wheel, the San Bernardino mysteries, when I first stepped into that. So she
guided you towards it, and is that what the question had to do with? Was like that entire thing, or that subject, or was that far after that?
Well, there's a ton of Hecate associations in the details of the San Bernardino mystery that I write about, the Empire of the Wheel thing, and so somebody, in my opinion, was doing things in veneration of Hecate. Definitely.
And so that's not authorized. Maybe there's a consequence of doing that. Like maybe there's a consequence of trying to utilize that power, and that's the like, oh, you don't use her to do those things.
You do not exactly. That's thank you. That's exactly. You do not abuse the power of Hecate. It will bite you. It will come back and hurt. Hecate's power. It's like electricity, right? Electricity can be a wonderful thing. Look what we're doing because of we have electricity, but also it can be deadly as hell. And if you mishandle electricity, it will kill you. And this is the same way with Hecate. And her power and influence. You got to be careful with it.
That's what we talked about
It's
too,
the
about like
duality of Amun.
of certain entities being able to enter, like Geordie Rose, they started the first quantum computer of him coming out and being like, we're tapping into another realm. Like there's these Lovecraftian beings that don't want to be bothered. Like there's things that enter into it and that can access it. So when just thinking of that and the electrical and how it can influence and
the other thing though that has everything to do with Hecate as I experienced her and others that helped me with that. I for years, there's just so much there. I stumbled into this consciously because I think I've been walking around this mystery since childhood, to be honest, because I grew up in this area too. But consciously, I stepped into this Empire of the Wheel mystery after learning how to do remote viewing. And that's when I was turned on to what's called karmic frequencies by an associate of mine named Seshari. And then from there, synchronicities just started presenting. What happened was the veil was lifted off my eyes and I was able to see synchronicities. Here's the thing, as they say, once you see them, you cannot unsee them. Yep. And so synchronicities can lead you to evidence of actual events and stuff. But after years of this, I've come to also understand, hey, wait a minute, maybe some of these events that I'm seeing aren't conscious strategies or conspiracies by human beings. Maybe what Hecate has revealed, because she's associated with the goddess Isis, the veiled Isis of Egypt, okay? And that what they say about her is when she lifts her veil to show you her true nature, tell no one. And since that happened, because that happened to me in 2014, I've begun to further understand that, wait a minute, when you're dealing with seeing the synchronicities on that level, you're actually seeing the fabric of reality, and how do I put it? How the universe, how reality, whatever it is, has set up this pattern for how things happen. So some things I'm beginning to understand, wait a minute, may not have been at the hands of diabolical humans. It could be that what I've detected, what I've seen is that deeper pattern of reality and how things happen. And there is a predictive quality to that, just like there's a predictive quality to karmic frequencies. You don't mess with it unless you can handle it. Because one of the things, for instance, is you can predict your own death. You can work out, and I think Seshari has possibly kind of identified the year of my death. And I mentioned that to him when we were looking at these numbers, and he said, "Oh, no, don't think that." And I said, Sesh, I'm going to be an old man when that year hits. So, it's very possible that could be the year that I die. And he didn't want to, he's like, no. It makes sense. And there's the other thing about it is when you see this, and it's not scary to me. None of this is scary to me. But yes, Hecate led me, introduced herself through the remote viewing, and she led me to the San Bernardino mystery. If that's a good start, I guess, for what.
Yeah, no, that's
whoa.
That was Did you get a hit, a cosmic hit, and you just nailed that? That's amazing.
So it makes me wonder, potentially, could these like goddesses, gods, these demigods, like if they were giants or titans, could they still be like buried below but like half alive and like still consciously projecting onto us?
I guess they could, but they wouldn't have to. Like Hecate doesn't have to. I don't see her as having a physicality in that way. She can manifest in any physicality she likes, and who does that sound like but Athena Bright Eyes? Because all through the Odyssey, Athena appears as all these figures, but he knows it's her through those bright eyes, those silvery eyes, and he knows it's her. And you know, she's the only one, remember, on Olympus who gives a damn about him. They're all either laughing it up or they're all mad at Odysseus, and she's the one that constantly saying, hey, you guys are being a bunch of jerks. This guy Odysseus is a good man who, you know, has always honored you all, and Poseidon's messing with him on he's just trying to get back home. And so you know, she loves Odysseus, she likes him, she likes the world of men, you know, humans, and is protective of us and such. And that's the vibe I get from Hecate also.
Dude, you're blowing my mind. The fact that, like, because I never talk about this. So the fact that you're saying this, like, I'm just sitting here grinning, like the biggest smile on my face. I feel like I'm glowing. I love that you guys are talking about this. This is amazing. And the fact that she led you, like, you're just making my heart like soar right now. So thank you.
She introduced herself. Sure. She introduced herself really as Saint Catherine of Alexandria. And knowing me, I dug into that deeper, and that's when I found out that there was never any such thing as St. Catherine of Alexandria. It's in the book. Hans can tell you. He's got it there. It's in the book. Rick Spence and I agreed on this. We did the scholarship. The Catholic Church came out and said some decades ago that, yeah, there was never any such thing as St. Catherine of Alexandria. She was a complete syncretization of Hecate and Hypatia of Alexandria, who did live and was this brilliant woman in ancient times whose father taught her math and philosophy and all the sciences. And she was hated because of that, of course, by the ignorant, stupid early church father patrons of Alexandria. And the emperor or governor or whatever, he had the hots for her. She was not interested. She rejected him. So he sicked the idiot early Christian leader on her, and so she died this gruesome death. And when you look at the story of St. Catherine of Alexandria, it's the same thing, but her symbols and her aspects are a match for Hecate. Her symbol is the wheel. Hecate's symbol is the wheel. She's the patron saint for this, that, and the other, the same people and things that, and on and so forth. So I realized, wait a minute, this Saint Catherine who has, here's what happened. You'll like this. Sechery had done some, after my Disneyland book, this is how the whole Empire of the Wheel thing kind of got started. After my Disneyland book, I was looking to follow the ley lines from Disneyland through Southern California to find any paranormal stuff. And I found in the library, I found online, I found this ghost story reported that a ghost was being seen in Inland Center, the mall in San Bernardino. And I talked to the lady. Her name is Ann Walker. She's a librarian here. And she said, there was this woman named Cora Stanton. They said it was a suicide, but I'm telling you, it was murder. Go look at the newspaper articles. So I went and looked at the newspaper articles. And this was after I had, months after I started doing remote viewing and was getting weird stuff. Yeah, that's the Disneyland book right there that I wrote about all of this. The Disneyland part, the ley line.
Where they used to have
I was
the carousel on the old ley lines. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they moved it and stuff. So Sechery had done some analysis of ley lines for me in the area, and there's what's called the Citrus History Park over in Riverside, and he told me to go check it out because he got ley line and energy and stuff there, an unknowable point. So I go over there one day. This is in December of 2007. I'd been remote viewing every day for like 3 or 4 months at this point, and getting all sorts of weird stuff. And I go over to the Citrus Park. I'm sitting in the Citrus Park, and St. Catherine of Alexandria had already popped up in my research. So I'm sitting in the little rose garden, of all things, in the Citrus Park. And I say out loud, I say, "Okay, Catherine, show me something." Like a dumbass, like smart ass, but show me something. So nothing happens. I get up, I walk to my car, and I go driving away from the park. And instead of going to the freeway through Riverside, I come to Victoria Boulevard, an old street through Riverside. And I'm like, I'm going to take the scenic route. And I decide that I'm going to turn, and I drive a couple of blocks, and then this hill catches my eye, and I'm real curious about it. I'm like, gee, I'm curious about this hill. I'm going to drive over there and take a look. So long story short, this is how I found the Prenda Quarry. And I'm standing there looking at this creepy, eerie place. And as I'm standing there, I kind of feel my energy kind of lowering. But on the drive home, between leaving the quarry and arriving home, my energy is draining from my body, and I'm getting a fever, and I'm getting body aches. And so by the time I'm home, I just feel awful, miserable. But I do my little research on St. Catherine, and that's when I discover the Hecate connection. Mm-hmm. So I feel bad for a couple of days. And I happened to look at an article on Mount Rubidoux in the Weird California book. And it says all this spooky stuff, and I'm compelled. I'm like, I got to go to Rubidoux tomorrow, even though I feel like crap. And my neck and my shoulder are in pain and so stiff that I have no range motion. I have to turn my body to look around. But I've got the bright idea, I'm going to go to Mount Rubidoux. So 3 days. Remember the numbers, 3 days, after getting this affliction while at the quarry. On a Saturday, it's in December, I go over to Mount Rubidoux in pain and all stiff, should not have been driving. And I walk up the path, and I go to the Peace Tower, which is a stone tower, which I've talked about and written about. And I'm looking at this, and I go up and I'm kind of touching the tower, and I look in the window, and I'm touching the tower, I'm looking around, and I'm looking around all around me, and then it hit me. Hey, wait a minute. No pain. Gone. Completely healed. Now, I totally credit that to Hecate guiding me. I like a smart ass, hey, Catherine, Hecate, show me something. She did. She took me to that quarry, which became very important in my research. And she brought me to where I was afflicted. And then 3 days later, remember, she's the triple aspect goddess. 3 days later, she compels me to go to Rubidoux, where I'm healed of this affliction. That was her attention getting step, you might say. That was her introducing herself to me. I firmly believe. So that was my first experience. But at the time, she was still this dark, scary thing. But as time went on, she became less and less scary. And then, like I said, in 2014, I believe she revealed a big secret to me, or not a big secret, but a big truth to me. And wow, it's so not scary that, you'd almost laugh. But then December 2007, it was in early 2008 that I met Ann Walker and first learned about the Cora Stanton death. So you see, it was the remote viewing and the weird stuff coming through that, and the encounter with Hecate. Oh, and she was having ravens visit me.
And elves.
Owls. Yeah, we talked about
ravens, owls.
What's that?
Sometimes hummingbirds. Ravens, owls, sometimes hummingbirds.
And hummingbirds in my backyard. Yeah, because I have citrus trees in the backyard at my house, and the hummingbirds during the blossom time are there.
But different people will take a different bird. Like my one friend's mom, like we were really hiking up a mountain to spread her ashes where she had asked us to, and as we're telling the story, my friend Cody's like, yeah, my mom always appears as a hummingbird, and literally as he said that, a hummingbird like zips right by us, and it's like, oh, there's Cat with us, and right, so it's like different. Some are owls, some are hawks, some are
Sorry, guys, I
hummingbirds.
lost you for a second. My mic stopped working, so I don't know if you said something to me. I wasn't ignoring you. I couldn't hear anyone for like 30 seconds.
Oh, no, we're good. It was Bernai talking.
Okay.
Talking about just not owls, but also hummingbirds and ravens, crows, hawks, and eagles. And each person or soul has a different like spirit bird, essentially.
It's interesting that the owl seems to be attached to like Athena and Inanna, like the owl.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. The owl is if it's not. Oh yeah, and the owl that I told you I saw on the top of the tree, it flew when it finally spread its wings wide, like it was posing, and then leapt off the top of the tree and flew. It flew in a particular direction. Now, 3 months later, I had my one bona fide UFO experience, and over the house, and the UFO also, when it finally departed after hovering over the house long enough for me to run in, get the camera, and start taking video of it, when it departed, it followed the same exact path as that owl. Now, one of the manifestations or messages that Hecate Athena gave me was in the summer of 2010. I discovered something. I've taken her to it. I don't like to identify where it is, but you've probably heard me talk about it. I call it the mandala. It's this thing painted on the ground at a particular place out here in San Bernardino. And I'd been going there for a little while. I think I'd discovered it. I can't remember off the top of my head, like maybe the year before, whatever. But I go there one afternoon in summer 2010, and I'm standing in the middle of this mandala, and I'm looking north, and on the mountain, I see the image of Athena, head and shoulders, portrait image with the helmet, and the owl on her shoulder. It was startling. Now, it looked like, it wasn't like a goddess standing there like a woman in a costume with a real owl. No. It was like, you know how like schools or cities will kind of burn with oil or whatever an image on a hillside, and it's in that kind of artistic medium. That's what it was. It looked like it was burned into the hillside. But here's the thing. There's no school out there with that mascot. Cal State San Bernardino was over to the east, not where I was looking, and I believe its mascot is the coyote or something. Nothing to do with Spartans or Athena or anything like that. I went back out there after that and never saw it again. But I've since, and I did a video on this on my channel. I since did. And I kind of inadvertently revealed the general area where I might have been, but I won't say any more than that. But I did a Google Sky thing, and I have found in the terrain of the hills of the direction I was looking at, I found the way the growth is. I can see the head and the shoulders and the owl. So here's what I think happened. I'm standing in the middle of this mandala, and I was standing at the right time of day with the sun angle and everything. And it was like one of those magic images where
like
you look
right
and you unfocus
now,
your eyes.
the equinox. You have to be at the equinox or the solstices for the shadows to hit these places for them to give the perfect visions, right?
Totally right.
I totally.
And it's the equinox.
What time of year were you there?
Go tomorrow and it'll still be the same.
What's that?
Go tomorrow, it'll still be
what
the
is
same.
today's date?
We're the equinox.
It will?
Today.
Yeah. We're the equinox today.
The 25th.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so that I'll tell you right now, summer 2010 is what I say when I crossed the Rubicon with this stuff. From that day forward, I don't give a damn who thinks I'm making stuff up. I don't care who doesn't believe me. I don't care what, some knucklehead says that, oh, you're just crazy about it. It's like, okay, I crossed my Rubicon. I no longer care who doesn't believe me about this stuff, because I know a lot of this stuff I've had someone with me. The UFO, I had a witness with me. It did happen, but that's how Hecate, she showed herself to me in the form of Athena on that hillside. For what that's worth.
Oh, that's so powerful. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
this is amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah. No, I love just learning more about Hecate and Walter's experiences. Just the huge link to Saint Catherine of Alexandria, it kind of reveals so much. So one of the things about Saint Catherine is she's known as the Lady of the Wheel. And so you'll always see her depicted with a wheel with spokes at her feet or somewhere around her. And I found it interesting because I feel like I encountered her with the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe down in Mexico. And that just it really spoke through me. There was a lot of very fascinating experiences in Merida where that involved, firstly, okay. So I helped this neighborhood come to a point where they could actually start to celebrate the migration for the Virgin de Guadalupe. Okay, so down there, when the migration is happening, or when the pilgrimation, people will walk through the neighborhood and there'll be parties set up for them as they go to Mexico City. So this one neighborhood had for 100 years been putting on this party and everything. And it was on this main central street, and it had all this history to go with it. And they had this shrine for the Virgin, a pretty special one. And anyways, I go walking through this neighborhood and I just hear this voice, female voice, you need to turn here. You need to go talk to these people. And so I walk up and this lady is standing in her garage and she's like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And well, we have this problem and I need the key. Now, remember in Hecate, she's also not only just the goddess of triple, but she's the goddess of the key. So she's the goddess of the wheel and the goddess of the key. So it's this whole big ordeal that's been going on for 10 years that has caused this neighborhood to not be able to have the party for the pilgrimation. And it's all over a key being held by another lady who won't give it up until the electric bill is paid. It just went and ensued into this huge drama. And I'm like, well, let's just go get the key. And she's like, you can do that. It's right over there. I was like, okay. So I go and I get the key and I bring it back to her. And I was like, here you go. She just wants this much for the electric bill. Do you have that? She goes, yeah, I got it here.
All she had to do was ask for it herself.
They wouldn't speak to each other. There was all this family drama going on between the two women that had built up so much they wouldn't even speak to each other.
Was there no masculine energy to break through that Gordian knot of crap?
Oh, no, not with the peregrination. And this is very, very
I'm that voice in my family. When my mom and sisters get so wrapped up in their crap, I'm the one that comes in and slices through that and says, enough of this shit. Get to the point.
You can only see the one thing, and then you have to just instantly be quiet. Otherwise, then you. Oh man.
Truth, man. Truth.
Yeah. So they worked it out, and it was like right on time. It was just a couple weeks before the party, and
Yeah,
they were
and
able to get the place cleaned up.
all because
and
you just
opened.
took the bull by the horns, and okay, that's the Libra.
So it was really neat though, because they did the whole party like dedicated to me in a sense too at the same time. So I was like, they were like, you have to come, and I almost didn't come.
Julia thinks we have
like, okay,
a heavy
fine.
influence of Scorpio in our thing. Would you agree?
Now see, Scorpio, yes, but it's in a back seat kind of zone. It definitely helps Libra, because to have the balance, you have to have the tail. That's how I see Scorpio. Scorpio's like our tail.
Okay.
No, I was just wondering, like, when your
there,
charts, like if you had Scorpio, I felt like you guys had a couple planets in the, it's like in Scorpio.
Yeah, we definitely have a
gotta
lot
get
of
our charts
Scorpio influence in our.
We got to get those done.
Yeah.
Julia, are you in this area or
I'm in
Southern
Laguna
California?
Beach.
Or?
Yeah, I'm in Laguna Beach.
Sweet.
I've been
right
telling her I
next to
got to
us.
get her down to Laguna Beach because it's beautiful down there. You need to come out here, and we'll take you on the
Over here to
Empire of the Wheel
Redlands.
tour.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Show
There's
you.
two best
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know any of that area. That would be amazing to see.
Where are you at, Hans?
I'm in Portland, Oregon. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're down this way,
Portlandia in there. No, I'm teasing.
I've actually never seen an episode of that
No.
show.
And then you got Bernie joining
I was
from
only
good old
forced to.
Canada where it's snowing right now. Yay!
oh
Hey.
gosh. Oh,
I used to
wow.
live in Calgary where Bernie lived when I was in 11th grade. So yeah, I have a huge.
Knows my pain.
I know the pain. The
But
5
the
foot
nose
plus
is
snow
flying
drifts,
down to
ice.
California and Mexico from time to time to escape the snow. So for next year, I'm gonna do a plan on a full tour, and I'm gonna be coming to all y'all's places to do the journeys. And
You are welcome, brother. Anytime. Anytime.
We'll have to make a documentary out of it, Bernie.
exactly, that's gonna be the whole plan. And I'm gonna aim
Bridging the gap.
to Montana as well and go visit Sagewall and the Giants Playground area with Julie Ryder. If you haven't seen those megalith sites, it's nuts. And I've discovered lots of similar stuff in southern Alberta that matches what she's found in Montana, and it's literally a Giants Playground of megaliths.
I've seen some huge stuff up there in Glacier Park and stuff, megalithics, definitely. Giant stone balls, like to the max. Scottish have giant stone balls, but no, the ones up in the mountains are just like massive. 2-3 times the height of a person.
Yeah, Osmanagich has
How do
some
you-
in
know-
Bosnia. There's some up
Yeah,
there.
Bosnia.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was round ones up there.
Yeah.
There's a couple
Oh
of them.
wow.
Well,
Yeah,
because
One of the
I've
guys-
also
so
found
cool.
some
How did you know
southern
they-
Alberta.
How did you know they had huge balls in Scotland? Did you look under the kilt?
No.
Oh, ayo.
Over the head.
So that was intentional.
Over the head.
Over the head.
See, she's used to what I do now.
That was.
No, see, these were like Randy's balls. They're so swollen and big, they would be far out beneath the kilts. Like,
He's clarifying.
I have a kilt, but I never go commando with it.
What? Seriously?
I never go commando with my
I
kilt.
do.
They're made of wool and they itch.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I'm not going. No way.
Although they
This went like to the gutter really fast.
right?
the blue ribbon tradition, don't you?
go to
With the
itchy
kilt?
balls.
You guys know that? The tradition is the ladies reach under your kilt, and if they like what they feel, they tie a ribbon around it.
That's how it started. That's where it originates.
That's how they get
I guess, yeah.
Oh, that makes that scene at the
Yes,
end
they
of
reach
Dune
over
a
there.
little more
The original Tinder. The original swipe left. It was grab and hold.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah,
killed
yeah,
me.
Ribbon
im-
around my boat.
That killed
imagine
me.
imagine how many ribbons Sean Connery probably got.
Oh,
Phil
good
there
Lord.
laughing.
There's something
I've
about his
already-
last
I've
name
already
that says
thought
it
of
all.
Ribbon.
He's a Connery.
The Conjuring.
Oh Lordy, yep. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Anyway,
Wait, so
Back
they say
to-
Catalina was named after Catherine?
I'm trying to.
yeah,
Oh.
Catalina is actually named after Saint Catherine of Alexandria. And I learned all that when I was doing the remote viewing, and I was being led into the world of Hecate through Saint Catherine and all that. If you're familiar with my book Secret Missions 1, The Hidden Legacy of Old California, which is about Juan Cabrillo and such, and the Sword of Joan of Arc, data was emerging that led to the writing of that book, initially through remote viewing. So stuff about the Juan Cabrillo mystery was coming through at the same time that the Catherine of Alexandria Hecate stuff and the Empire of the Wheel stuff subsequently came through. And all I did was document it and put it aside until I'd finished the Empire of the Wheel trilogy. And then I finally decided to write that material. But it was during the fall of 2007, early 2008, that I was learning about Juan Cabrillo and how some people suspected he might have been buried on what we know as Catalina Island, and all this weird stuff. But yeah, Catalina Island was named after St. Catherine of Alexandria, so it's Hecate Island is what it is. Now here's what's interesting.
Yep.
Here's what's interesting. The Chumash Indians, a strong spiritual symbol of theirs that they painted on some rocks in Santa Barbara area and stuff is a particular wheel which looks like Hecate's wheel, and the center of their worship, their religion. This was before the Europeans arrived and stuff, was Catalina Island. Okay, so they were worshiping this headless god called Chininch. That was
and they say it was like a Stonehenge. Like the outside, they had like a Stonehenge, and the Chinchari. I can never say the name that they worship. Oh wow!
Chininch, and there are multiple spellings, and so there you have a connection to Hecate, but also possibly to what we call Cthulhu, what Aleister Crowley, 19 years or more before Lovecraft wrote Call of Cthulhu, what Crowley called Cthulhu in the Pacific and so forth. So the Chumash Indians in California, they're kind of at the heart of part of this whole mystery. But that's how I learned about the Catalina Island stuff and its connection to Hecate.
It's interesting that you bring up Cthulhu, because in the Call of Cthulhu, the Lovecraft book, he references several different Inuit and native languages that have this overlap, calling to this beast or this creature from the sky that's buried in the ocean.
Yeah.
So that's wow.
Yeah. Well, there was a guy named John Peabody Harrington. He was an anthropologist, cultural anthropologist. His specialty was native cultures in Mesoamerica and North America, and he became obsessed with keeping alive dead languages. Okay, and he particularly became obsessed with the natives here in what we call the Greater Inland Empire of Southern California.
Really?
Now, he would live among them. They would send representatives from the Smithsonian out here just to get a report from him and bring him his checks, and he would avoid them.
When was this? What was the time period?
Oh gosh, I think he started in the 1920s, maybe the 1910s, and for several decades. And here's the thing: he's considered the single most prolific scientist in U.S. history. That he left behind so many boxes and boxes of notes, just notes that to this day, he died decades ago. To this day, the Smithsonian still doesn't have the staff to have gone through all the boxes. And when you go there to look at the Harrington collection, they have a standing invitation for anybody who wants to come process one or more of these boxes is welcome to. So this guy was obsessed with something, some secret these people knew, and specifically the 4 tribes whose, get this, their lands all come to the foot of Mount Rubidoux in Riverside, but not one of them claimed the mountain itself, and they swore that the mountain was sacred. Okay,
Really?
And I talk about this in a couple of the books. So he was on to some secret, and he never revealed what it was.
I've heard of several indigenous natives talking about, like, their elders, that there's this secret ancient language that they have, that it's like a global like a world language, and that like the symbols, a lot of like the pictogram symbols are characters within this language, supposedly.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. That makes sense. I've come to suspect that we were talking earlier about the Kam Empire, that they came here long before the Chinese or anyone else, and so this could have all been an influence of the Kam, who were Hindi and Egyptian, ancient, Egyptian and all the other cultures through southwest and on into Southeast Asia. And the Pacific Island cultures and stuff. And they brought whatever this influence was. And they, if there is some entity or race of beings at the bottom of the Pacific, like when we talk about Crowley's Cthulhu and Lovecraft's Cthulhu, the Kam Empire probably knew about it.
It's interesting that you bring up the Kam Empire as well. And I love that episode that you did. In my book on the Dropa, I talk about Kam Tibet, which is far eastern Tibet, which is now central China. And this is where this group of nomadics fled from. And so they're the Dropa, the Zopa, the Drokpa, the Brokpa. They speak this language of Shina, which is older than Sanskrit by 2,000-3,000 years plus. It's Menorah, Brokskot, and Brokat. These are the 3. Menorahskot, Brokat, Broskat are the 3 languages that they're speaking. And a lot of it originates out of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kashmir, this whole region now. But when you're going through these different nomadic cultural groups that come out of central Tibet, the Kam region of Tibet, they're speaking this language that's older than all of the dialects in the region. And so this is super interesting.
The Queen Calafia stuff
does it
really
have any similarities?
Sorry, what?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask if that language might have any similarities to the Basque language, but Julia mentioned Queen Calafia, and that's a very interesting connection.
Right, especially like there are different accounts of pirates or people from ships that spoke of women that had all these jewels and gold, and they were on an island, and these warrioresses.
Right.
Well, when you look at the Dropa people, they're 4 foot tall. They have red hair and blue or greenish blue eyes. When you look at the Basque, they're also very short people in stature, and they have this auburn red hair and green within blue eyes. When you look at people from Azerbaijan, it's almost the same. And then you follow their genetic traits, haplogroup B. Brian Forrester did a lot of research into this. They end up in Paracas as the elongated skull people. They also have this auburn hair and green blue eyes. And they end up in New Zealand with the Maori, not the Moai.
Maui, yeah.
The Maori, yeah. And so some of the earliest Maori were all these red-headed green eyes. And there's an amazing documentary series on this called Skeletons in the Cupboard. Where did the redheads go? It's a 3-part series. It connects all of Polynesia all the way up to Alaska and all their ancient history and lore and their spoken indigenous culture that keeps coming through. We're told in the West, there's nobody been there before 800 years ago. And they're like, we have over 2,000 years of spoken verse tales. And
right? Like
they start
the
looking into
Rongo
things
script.
they're all these redheads out
they
of
say
Azerbaijan. So yeah, really fascinating.
Rongo script, and then its similarities to the same language of Mohenjo-Daro.
Mohenjo-Daro, yeah.
Mohenjo-Daro.
Yeah.
It's very similar, and it's never been deciphered. Correct.
Exactly.
Very similar.
So wild that and that they tried to keep the Rongo language on Easter Island was like just modern made and some hoax, and then it's like now they're digging up the bases and the bodies of the Moai statue, and it's completely carved and covered in Rongo language, thus proving.
And they're all holding their bellies, and you see this in Peru, and you see this in Göbekli Tepe and Karen Tepe on the pillars, and you see this. You see this in. What is the spot in Mexico? I can't think of it, where the Atlanteans are, but they're also holding their bellies. It's not Chichen Itza.
Tula? Not Tula.
Tula, thank you. Yes. It's where the
Atlanteans. Tula, okay.
Tula.
Yes.
And
then you see this all over the world, this holding of the belly or the holding of the bag. And Graham Hancock has done a lot of research into this, but it's been super fascinating.
I find it interesting when you talk about the Basque and their connections to these kind of ancient secrets, particularly Atlantean, and you think of what Julia brought up about Calafia and the Amazons in California, which I write about. I go into and fairly extensively in my book Veiled Destinies, Secret Missions 5, Veiled Destinies. I go into that California connection to the Amazons that Julia had brought up. But here's an interesting thing. The Basques, when they came to America, gravitated to California.
And Nevada.
They're out here in the West. And Nevada, and these would have been the territories at the heart of this Amazonian empire. So if there was a connection to any kind of Atlantean culture or whatever this lost culture was that the Basques are descendants of, I find it interesting that a bunch of Basques came out here specifically to an area, a region that is connected to those things. Like, okay, what did they know? And besides, bringing the wonderful practice of eating grilled steak and French fries, that's a whole Basque thing. I'm glad they brought that to America.
There's a lot that live in Nevada near South Lake Tahoe, like in Gardnerville and this whole area. There's a lot of Basque that live there.
Yeah, when I was working for the FBI and we followed our Soviets over to Reno, and while we were there, that was the first time I ever ate at a Basque restaurant because the big Basque community in Nevada there. You're right. Yeah. So it was. I loved it. I got to get her to we got Basque restaurants out here in Chino, and I got to drag
the best food you'll ever have.
It's wonderful. Paella, steak. Did I say steaks and French fries?
I heard the largest Basque community was in Idaho. I did a show with someone, with Nathan, and he was discussing it, and I had no idea.
Yeah. I just learned that recently in the last couple of years that most of them are in Idaho because I was aware of a whole bunch in California.
So that's interesting because some of the best teff, if you ever go to Ethiopian restaurants and you have injera, it's like a sourdough bread that you eat your food with through your hands. It's made from a flour called teff. And the best place that they found to grow teff in the United States is in Idaho. And so this is where it all comes out of. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Here we are, the Fuente Magna Bowl.
Magna Fuente Bowl, right? I had to bring this up.
Oh yeah, this is in my lecture as well. There's a stele, but it's buried in the Bolivian Museum now. That has similar glyphs. There are two types of proto Sumerian glyphs on this, and it tells the story of a young girl. I can't remember the entire story. I read it somewhere. But the outer side of the bowl has all these. The outer side of the bowl has all these seafaring glyphs on it as well, and this is found in the fields of this guy in the Upper Highlands of Bolivia.
Oh yeah, Bolivia, right by Lake Titicaca.
Yeah, he was feeding his pigs out of it before somebody realized what it was. It's like,
right?
okay.
I know.
So in my lecture that we did a little bit of last night, out of the 5 houses of Kemet, right, there's a 6th house, and it's Peru, the land of many houses. And the glyph shows from the land of Temu or Kemet, there is many houses across 4 waters. And so what are the 4 waters? Well, you have the Nile, the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, the Amazon, or the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Pacific, and all of the currents will bring you eventually to Peru, the land of houses. And so it's interesting that we start finding all these other cultures that have left artifacts here in the ancient past.
That's fascinating. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, she's got to see. I can't wait to show her Puma Punku. The first time I saw Puma Punku, or even heard of it, was in 2003 on a South America trip with David Childress. It wasn't all over TV and like it is now and stuff. And so we go to Tiwanaku, and there's a couple of us standing there talking with him. Our whole group was still in the museum, but myself and Doug Nason, I don't know if you ever heard of him, and another guy named Ron and David were all standing outside. And David said, "Hey, I'm going to take the group over here, but I want to get your guys' opinions, your reactions to this place we're going to see next." So we walked over to the Puma Punku site, and he says, "This is called Puma Punku." And I'm looking at this, and one of them asks, "How old is this site?" And he goes, "Nobody knows. This is how it was found, however many hundreds of years ago, and had been there." And it blew my mind seeing those H blocks and seeing the perfect holes drilled. And my first thought, my impression was, this stuff was machined. This is not, done with, chisels and wet strings. And it was just startling. I had never seen it. Now everybody has seen it multiple times, and there's all this, snark about it and this, that, and the other. But it really, I think it was machined. All that
Have you ever been to Egypt?
Long. Not yet. I've been to Eritrea. I've worked in the Sudan several times, but I haven't made it to Egypt. Flown over it.
I was going to say, let me bogart.
But I got to get there.
Bogart your thing here.
Did you get to see any of the pyramids in Sudan or Eritrea while you were there, or not?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to. It's Merowe, which is the place in Sudan with the pyramids, and no, I did not get to go to Merowe. I saw, everything that they have in the. I was in Khartoum, so I was working in the city, pretty busy when I was there. With to the extent that I just didn't have a chance to leave town. But I saw the things that are in the museums there and such. But no, I've got to. And when I went to Eritrea, it was cut short. I was only there for like a week. So, Cairo, Egypt is a place I've got to get to still.
Cairo is
both.
You've been to Lima, crazy large city, obviously.
We're going to travel the world together next year, right? We're going to start in Mexico, then we're going to go around.
Let's do it, Bernie.
Let's do it.
Right? I'm getting you.
I need to go.
Let's do it.
I haven't been back to Nepal since 2007.
The more the merrier.
I need to go
back.
Hey, Hans, is there going to be available your lecture where people can, pick up on that or maybe listen in?
I have my lecture from last fall in Vegas. It's on Giza Direct on YouTube. I've done a lot of interviews with Brian Forrester, Patricia, and Yusuf Iwan. Some of their stuff. Interviewed Hugh Newman and Andrew Collins. I used to do, when I lived in Hawaii, I met Brian Forrester.
I love Andrew's stuff. Yeah.
He's like, I need to do my book covers and my flyers. And so I started doing all of his graphics. And then he introduced me to the Kemet School, basically, through Stephen Mailer and Patricia and Yusuf Iwan. And so I picked up doing a lot of their stuff. And so in 2014, Brian invited me to Peru I enjoyed. Peru blew my mind because it reminded me so much of Nepal. I was in Cusco, and I was just
Really?
like, wow.
Oh, wow.
If you just swap out the language, it's the same. It really was the same. And there was one night where we're hanging out with this woman. She was trying to sell us the world. Martha Washington, you remember me? And she was native and local, and she spoke Quechua. And I'm with Yusuf Ayawan, and she speaks to us. She asks us a question in Quechua, and he picks it up in Arabic, and I pick it up in Nepalese, and I answer in Nepalese, and she answers in Arabic, and we all laugh together because we all understood what we were talking about. And that blew my mind. It was that intuitive. He knew exactly what she asked. So did I, and his answer was literally similar to mine. It was like, okay, you're my brother, Yusuf. From now on, I get you. I get your family. You were talking about Heket earlier, and I wanted to ask. So Yusuf's sister makes all these amazing crystal necklaces and everything in Egypt and Cairo. Their house literally looks at the Sphinx. They're a block and a half from the Sphinx. Front access to the pyramids. Hakim, as I said, was her father and his father, Yusuf's father. I really befriended the other brother, Sadat. He now lives in Belgium or Switzerland with his wife and their child. But really love this family. And she built me this necklace because I had this horrible neck ache going to Egypt when I was there in 2016. It was so bad. I was so pinched up. And so she built me this necklace that's all agate and amethyst. And then she put this piece of carnelian that's like super old. And she's like, you need to put this over your injury, and this is what will heal you. And so we end up going to the Temple of Hathor, and this is why you were talking about Isis and Heket relationship. And my curiosity is if there's a Hathor relationship as well. And I'll get into this in a second. Julia loves this part of my speech.
I unfortunately, I have to interrupt. I apologize. I unfortunately have to bug out. But Maliah can stay.
A few minutes. I've got to bug out too. So
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just realized what time it was. I was off on the time.
I was wondering if you.
I was thinking it was 15 minutes before it was. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great talking with you, Hans and Julia. We've got to. We're going to come to Laguna. We now have someone to visit.
We have to meet up. Yes.
And then we can talk about you coming out here, and we can give you the tour, the Empire of the Wheel tour.
That would be amazing. And thank you so much for connecting us and talking about Akate. It was like profound for me. Like, it's so amazing. I can't thank you guys enough. It's astounding.
We will talk more about her.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Okay.
We'll
let's stay in touch, Julia.
Okay, for sure.
Fortnite, can you get share Walter's email and stuff with Julia, please?
100%.
Yeah.
And likewise, Walter, this has been amazing. I know we've had some back and forth online, but this has been really super amazing.
Hans, we got to have you over on the Walter Bosley channel on the show.
Well, everybody here, I need to have you on the Walter Bosley channel. So.
I'm getting used to this environment. I'm stuck in the design world all day, and so getting used to being in social media environments has been super.
But you're going to Mexico.
Okay. Well, I want to have all of you. So
let's do it. Right? Well, appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much for coming on, and glad we all made this happen.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Great.
So I can
thank you.
end
We'll
on
be in
your
touch.
channel for you, Walter, if you want, and then Mike sadly just joined. I don't know how long you've been there. I'm sorry I didn't bring you up sooner. Mike, with all of the Tulum artifacts that, if you haven't seen these before, Walter, maybe just
that's cool.
Look before you go.
Well, keep going with that, and when I get a chance, I'll watch the rest of it that I missed.
Okay.
Wow.
That's interesting. That's cool stuff.
Oh, it's a mind-blowing collection, and it's a whole other story. That's another episode we'll have to do. This is just a teaser for you.
Yes. Absolutely. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Maliah.
Thanks. See you later, guys.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Jay.
So right, and ending it on the Bosley channel, but still live on all of our channels.
Yeah, I didn't. For some reason, it said we were all tapped out, but oh well. I'll repost it.
Now try, or it wasn't.
Walter, that was awesome. Wow, what I'm so glad, Julia, you came on this because I knew you guys would like click hardcore. The stuff that they're into
Right?
is right up your
I
alley.
was like, what needs to happen?
Yeah, this was profound for me. Like, and the thing is, I was just at the beach on Saturday, and I've been feeling this Catalina vibe too for a while, but I've always felt so drawn to it. So to connect that, I was reading a Catalina book, looking at Catalina, and then this guy I'm friends with I hear him on the phone, like raging on this guy at the basketball court behind me. And it's because they're going to Catalina, and I was like, hey, I want to go on the backside of Catalina, and I want to go to this other specific spot, Toyin. And I was like, can I go with you guys? Like I have some, so I just feel really drawn to Catalina. And then for this to happen, and he connected so many dots, and I never talk about Akate. So my heart is just, I'm on cloud 9. So thank you guys for
you should read
Don't
these.
worry, sister. I knew it had to happen, and what an equinox to have it.
Yeah, it all aligned perfectly. The perfect day.
These are some of Walter's. Walter's got a huge amount of books, but these are awesomely amazing books. They talk about a lot of what we chatted about tonight. And then Origin is more of the airship mystery stuff that really blew my mind, and that's what got me into his work, along with Farrell through the Secret Space program. So back in the day.
He talks about the Secret Space program.
So yeah, I'll send you a link.
Okay.
Somewhere I have it still because I think I bought the rights to it, but I'll send you a link. There's 2 shows SSP. The first one was done by Heinrich Palmgren before he got axed out of the community for his political views. Sadly, we won't go there. But the second one was done with Dark Journalist in Texas, and DJ ended up taking the train, and the train was delayed, and so they had Jay Dyer do. He was the MC for part of it, and it was amazing. It was like Joseph Farrell, Walter Bosley. Why can't I think of these people? A bunch of people, regardless. Yeah, I'll send you the link for it, but it's the Secret Space program from 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. But this was before, Corey Good kind of usurped the name and tried to change all of SSB. This was long before that. This is like the actual nuts and bolts of what was going on, the money, the different programs. And so Walter talks a lot about this Sonora Aero Club and the Nymza, this group of aviators from Sonora and San Bernardino area that were building aircraft that were not dirigibles and were not hot air balloons, in the early 1800s. So, yeah, really, really interesting stuff.
And they're doing a Sonora a meetup in October in Sonora, like a conference.
Yeah,
where everyone could go.
Nymza conference.
The Nymza conference, and so Nymza is like an acronym. I don't know exactly what it stands for. I don't have it on the top of my tongue, but it's like the nationalistic hunter-seeker program, something along these lines. Really, really fascinating stuff that Walter's come up with and researched into this, which is just, phenomenal.
Well, no wonder he's got a Kate guiding him. Makes sense. That checks out.
Seriously, yeah. I didn't get to talk about that when I did one of my first Reiki sessions with somebody. I felt like there was somebody else. It was a woman that had her hands on me while he was working with me. And I said, do you work with others, implying some sort of spiritual connection? And he's like, no. And so that was maybe the indicator that I have a hitchhiker. And years later, an ex of mine was like, yeah, you're totally a reincarnate of your cousin. And she had no idea who my cousin was, but all of a sudden pulled this out of the blue. And I started researching into my cousin, and I fully that there is energy, there definitely. And so, is this my hitchhiker? Good question. Definitely a good question.
We're connected DNA like to all of our
We all have our
ancestors.
hitchhikers, right?
Yeah.
And one
It's this-
hitchhiker line the ancestor.
I
and
wouldn't
then
call. I mean, I think they'd be
angels and
insulted
demons.
that you're calling them a hitchhiker.
No,
Like,
yeah,
there's-
exactly. No,
They're like, what?
That was how we started the conversation, and so I thought that was an interesting aspect because that could be an archon. If you're doing hardcore drugs and alcohol all the time, you're shifting your veil and you're attracting entities and energies into you that you don't even know, and these things can take control. All of a sudden, you're blacked out, and you're in a world of somebody else's world. Exactly. Yeah. No. Literally.
Yeah, it's a real thing. The pineal gland is easily manipulable when it doesn't have its protection, and those type of drugs like benzodiazepines and certain depressants, things like that. Alcohol specifically.
Manipulative.
I feel like SSR.
Yeah.
I feel like SSRIs like conjure up some serious like attachments, and that's
Side
it's
effects
something
may
I
be
just
suicide.
feel like and then when people go to stop it, they have nightmares in their experiences. Like I feel like it opens them up to the most entities.
The ultimate question around that is we're constantly in a state of fight or flight. Internet and everything going on in the world. We're so bombarded by so much information that we can only process so much of it, and the rest of it ends up in dream time. And so we're always in fight or flight. And so how much easier is it to manipulate these states of mind? Speaking of Cthulhu, are these some new pieces that you've got? Interesting.
No, I've had this for a couple of years actually. It's really iconic though what it shows. I think this is really important here. You see this type of herding staff here. You'll see this in Enki and Jesus depictions with the sheep, and then you see over here the sickle or whatnot, and that's probably relevant.
Showing information on what they're doing. Look at the one below with the handshake, the bag, the shepherd, and like that purse thing, right? Like from angel to man, from demigod to god to man to elongated skull folks that came from the sky or the plasma or something. Potentially.
Something. Yeah.
And happy spring equinox to you, my friend Mike. And Hans, are you going anywhere close to Tula, Mexico, and where you're going in Mexico right away? No, darn it. Well,
yeah, we're going to Chichen Itza, Coba, Nakmal, Tulum, which is right on the coast.
Yeah, not the right direction.
And a couple of the
this is more towards Mexico City and stuff.
There's my favorite piece, the scrying mirror.
Ooh.
It's so epic. I swear you're going to be summoning or talking to other entities in there at some point.
I hope so.
Right? I was thinking about doing like all my podcasts through the mirror, doing like one of these,
Ooh, yes, please.
Oh man. Yeah, I put my name on my book, so I guess after Contact in the Desert, I'll probably actually like do it the other way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you're gonna do the big unveil? You should do like
real person.
Yeah, you should do it. Oh, I would love to stream it. The big unveil.
Right? Like, let's multi-stream that big unveil, baby.
Yeah, well, we should do a stream from Contact in the Desert. I think
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
We'd love to, by all means.
It's going to be fun.
I love that place.
I'll have the third book there. I'm just about to finish it. We sent off for the other carbon dates. We had the guy come in, the PhD from France, and took samples from 2 skulls. He took 4 samples we're determined to get a collagen sample at this point, and or enough collagen in there to get a analysis. So hopefully we get a date, and that'll really tell us a lot.
That's what I respect so much about your actual work and research, is that you're actually putting in nonstop work and research to get these things dated and tested and actually verified. And it's mind-blowing, the results you get back.
Yeah, it's the reality is like I tried to put this off onto other researchers and ufologists. I wrote out to so many people thinking that one of them would take this and just run with it, and they didn't at all. And so there was no effort made. That was the crazy part. You know, they didn't even, oh yeah, this is probably fake or whatever. There was nothing like that made even. And so it was really sad. As far as the question I just saw pop up, the artifacts come from two different places, Abuelos de Jalisco, Mexico, and Tula, Hidalgo. The pieces I'm showing right now are the Abuelos pieces. And this type of stuff over here is from Tula. See the difference in everything, the stone types, the craftsmanship, but the story's the same. We're starting to get some.
And look at Cthulhu there. Always Cthulhu. Cthulhu keeps coming up.
Yeah, this beard is really iconic in a lot of these beings. And the dogs keep coming up too.
All right, guys. Well, I am out of here. Thank you for a magical evening. It's been amazing.
For sure, Julia. No worries. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, sorry, Mike, you're kind of just coming in at the very end.
You're good, man.
To the 2-hour mark. We're going to have to do another full episode together very soon, covering everything, because there's been so many developments, and well, I just never can stop looking at your artifacts. They're amazing.
I'll have my book tomorrow in hand, and I'm really stoked about that. So,
all right. Would you be available tomorrow by chance? Should we do this the Friday night? All right. Well,
let's do it.
In that case, then I'll probably just shut her down now, and we will be back tomorrow with Mike for a full episode and going into these epic artifacts. And thank you, Julia, and thank you, Hans, and thank you, Mike, and shout out to Walter and Maliah, and to all of you watching. Ta-ta. We'll be back tomorrow. On that note, love you. Thank you all for watching and for making this happen.
Well done, Bernie. Thanks.
Much love, brother. And if you want to come back, we'll see you tomorrow. If not, we'll see you next Wednesday. Well, maybe next. No, you have a safe trip, and you let us know when we can.
I talked with Timothy and with Johnny, and we might be able to do something Thursday because it's kind of our rest day, or Wednesday evening once we all get to the hotel. So we'll see.
Perfect. Well, hopefully,
if anything, I'll just do a recording and post it. We can. I wanted to get you guys involved, but I'm not sure how it's all going to unfold.
Exactly. Well,
even for 30 minutes, it would be amazing. So
exactly. If you can phone in, you can phone in. Either that or record, and we'll just play the recording, and then we'll phone in with them later. Whatever. Have a safe trip. Take as many pictures and videos as possible, and happy spring equinox, everyone.
Cheers, brother. Have a good night.
Ta-ta.